Today, we're going to talk about how a single line drawn on a map helps spark a revolution. This is the story of the Proclamation of 1763, and it's a huge deal. Okay, imagine this. You and your friends just won a massive game, and the prize is this incredible, giant new backyard. But just as you're about to run out and explore it, someone puts up a huge fence and says, "Nope, sorry, you can't go in there." That's pretty much exactly how the American colonists felt right after winning a major war. So to really get what happened, we're going to break it all down. We'll start with that line on the map, look at the big problems Britain was facing, see their official solution, check out the colonists' angry reaction, and then connect all the dots to the American Revolution. All right, first up, a line on the map. We're talking about how a whole mountain range basically got turned into a giant invisible fence. The year is 1763. Great Britain has just won a huge conflict called the 7 Years' War. They now control a ton of new land in North America. But instead of opening it all up, King George III draws a line right down the Appalachian Mountains. And just like that, the western frontier was closed for business. Now, this line, which ran all the way from Canada down south, wasn't random. It had a few key purposes. Number one, stop colonists from pushing west. Number two, try to prevent fights between the settlers and Native American tribes. And number three, make it easier for Britain to control its brand new territory from all the way across the ocean. So why did they do this in the first place? Why draw this line? Well, it turns out that winning a massive war can actually create a whole new set of headaches. And the biggest headache of all? Money. Winning a global war is unbelievably expensive, and Britain was left with a massive bill. We are talking about a mountain of debt. Seriously, this number was so gigantic, it was threatening to crash the entire British economy. From this moment on, pretty much every decision the king made was about this financial crisis. So Britain's game plan was pretty straightforward. They had to avoid another costly war on the frontier, they wanted to control the very profitable fur trade, and, maybe most importantly, they wanted to keep the colonists packed together near the coast. Because, let's be honest, it's way easier to tax people when you know where they are, all to pay off that war debt. Which leads us right to the official solution. King George III, facing all these problems, came up with a plan that he thought would deliver both peace and a lot of profit. Now, to get this plan, you have to understand a key idea: crown authority. This was basically the belief that the king had the absolute power to make any and all rules for the colonies. The proclamation was a powerful way of saying, hey, just a reminder, you exist to benefit Great Britain, and we're the ones in charge here. So the rules were super specific. First, a hard stop. No one could settle west of the mountains. Period. Second, individual colonists were now forbidden from buying land directly from native tribes. From now on, only the British government could negotiate those deals. And finally, if you wanted to be a trader out there, you needed a special government license. And this is where you can see two totally different ways of looking at this law. For the British, the goal was simple: a peaceful frontier they could control and make money from. But for many Native American tribes, this law was actually a welcome development. It offered some real protection for their homelands and hunting grounds from settlers who were constantly pushing westward. But that brings us to the other side of the story. Because, as you've probably guessed, not everyone was thrilled with the king's new rules. In fact, a lot of people were absolutely furious. To get why they were so mad, you need to know about land speculators. Think of these guys as the big-shot real estate investors of the 1700s. Really important people. Even George Washington had bought up huge chunks of this western land for cheap, planning to sell it later for a massive profit. And this proclamation, it just made all those investments totally worthless overnight. And it wasn't just the rich guys. Regular farmers and pioneers who were dreaming of getting their own plot of land out west were suddenly told no. Colonial governments, some of which had old land claims that went all the way to the Pacific Ocean, just had those claims erased. And for the general public, it just felt like a massive overreach, the king telling them where they could and couldn't live. And really, it all boiled down to this one question that people started asking: why should some king, thousands of miles away, get to decide where we can build a life? For people who had just fought for this land, it felt like a complete betrayal. And then came the part that really added insult to injury. To enforce this new line, Britain sent thousands of soldiers to North America. And guess who they decided should pay for this army? Yep, the colonists, through brand new taxes. So now,
they couldn't go to the land they wanted, and they had to pay for the soldiers who were stopping them.
Okay, you can probably see where all of this is headed. This brings us to our final section, how this one law planted the seeds of a revolution and how a line on a map helped start a fight for independence. The long-term effects were huge. For one, a lot of colonists just ignored the law and went west anyway. But more importantly, it gave all 13 colonies a shared problem, something they could all be angry about together. They started to feel like second-class citizens, and this proclamation went right to the top of a growing list of complaints against King George. And when you look at the timeline, it's so clear. The Proclamation of 1763 wasn't just a one-off thing. It was the first big domino. Just 2 years later, you get the Stamp Act, another tax the colonists hated. From there, things just escalated, leading straight to the Revolutionary War and, eventually, the Declaration of Independence. So if you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. The proclamation was Britain's attempt to solve its own problems of debt and control. But in trying to fix their issues, they accidentally created a much, much bigger one, an American identity that was ready to fight for its own future. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. How can a single law, just a line on a map, completely change the way people see themselves and their country? For the American colonists, that line on the map became a line in the sand.